Hello, hi, welcome. My name's Emma, if you don't know me. I'm course leader of illustration and visual communication. And I'm really happy to welcome Tiziana, who's going to talk about some of the work that she spotted from the graduating students of illustration. So I hand you over to Tiziana.
Thank you. So let me introduce myself. I'm Tiziana. I am Westminster illustration course alumni, and I live being an artist. So I made of this profession my profession, and I guess it's a successful business so far. So I've been looking at your work, guys, and they are all amazing. It's been really difficult to choose something. But again, I picked three of the works that most resonated with me, and I'm gonna spend some words for each one of them. I choose these particular three pieces because they communicate different things to different levels, and I thought it was interesting to actually have an overview of each one of them. Okay, so the first one I picked was Lucy's work, and I have some notes, so don't mind me if I read. I didn't want to miss any point. And the color is representation. This one particularly resonated with me because I love the idea of abstract representation beside the usual human being figure. And I think this idea has a great potential, and I can easily see this illustrative system developed further, and it's very clever, and it's a really clever work. And I see a great possibility of implementation in magazines and posters and campaigns. So this is why it's a fresh view of representation, which I really liked. So I picked this one first. Okay, so the second work that I really liked was the works of Xander Thiel. I hope I'm pronouncing your names correctly. Pardon if I don't. Spectral wanderings, and I find illustrations to be exceptionally made, very tasteful, and a very good execution. And in my opinion, this body of work ticks all the boxes. First of all, to a communicational level. It is very appropriate and overall well executed, and also well presented, which is also an important part of visual communication. About this work also, I have to admit that thematic is something that really resonates with me, so the choice was immediate. I love mythology, and if I were to go to a bookstore, I would probably buy this book. So this means to me that this is a very valid work. So well done. And let's hope now I can actually speak about the third one. This is CJ works, and there were several beautiful illustrations, but I chose this one because it is not an easy task to dive into human feelings and to find the right visuals to communicate these feelings. And I think starting from the color choices, the composition, and the very, very clever use of empty spaces, this piece communicates really well what CJ was trying to say. So this was my third choice and the reason why I chose it. But again, guys, all the works were really good. I just narrowed down my selection, but really well done to everyone. And
that's brilliant. No, thank you. Thank you so much, Tiziana. I think it's nice to have somebody else's perspective on work. I know, when students are working with us, the tutors, all year, and we give them the same sort of feedback, and maybe somebody coming from a different perspective. I mean, your background I sort of understand maybe why you chose, but you chose a good range and for really good reasons. So
yeah, well, I am biased.
No, that's great. Thank you so much. Thank you very much indeed.
No, thank you, thank you. I really enjoyed it, and best of luck, guys. Make it worth.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Our second industry professional who's going to pick some of the students' work from illustration and visual communication. So I hand you over to Aidan. Hi.
Hey guys. Barefoot here, illustrator and designer. I'm currently a practicing illustrator and commercial kind of designer for tech marketing, and also part of the Underway Studio print collective down in Brixton. I've kind of had a look through the IVC kind of graduate work. I think overall it's really cool. There's a really nice mix of work going on here. And it really kind of establishes what visual communication is all about. Like, it's a very broad spectrum of approaches. Let me share my screen and I'll get into the work. Starting off, there's 3 students that really kind of like I kind of gravitate towards in terms of their kind of work and kind of very different approaches. Initially, we have Amelia Potter, who's very kind of like character, almost like concept art style approach in this very comic book. You take a kind of penciler, you take an inker, and you take a colorist style. I thought worked really well. The kind of proportions and understanding of like facial expressions was really strong. With this Alicia example, there's a William one, which I think really understands kind of movement and there's these dynamic kind of structural lines going on. I thought this was all really strong work, even though it might be development pieces. There's kind of components and pieces in there that you could equally kind of chuck out as final work and allow it to be a much looser, much lighter kind of approach and much more gestural. You can kind of see dynamic lines, you can see weight. I found that when you got into the kind of digitally colored pieces, this is something I kind of experienced as well, is it tends to kind of slow it down. The really nice line weight is still there, but when you kind of flatten it all, it kind of creates a much more like almost like a homogeneous kind of sense where it's not as easy to kind of dictate weight, but it's still present. I thought the approach was nice. I thought the use of color was strong and bold, and also these really interesting ways of using text and using very modern kind of ideas and symbols that we all know of, the kind of message bubbles, was quite nice. But all I would say was that in regards to your like kind of development work, the way in which the pencil line sits underneath the kind of pen ink brush, because they exist in the same world, it's a lot easier to kind of get that message across and still have the layered depth. When it goes into a more kind of digital space, you find it a lot where it kind of automatically flattens it and it makes everything of like a single value. I would say you kind of carry on doing what you've done here, where you're kind of bringing very traditional medias, be very playful and be almost like methodical with it and kind of experiment with the kind of tactility of ink, brushes, pencils, maybe even kind of like rubbings of various textures, just to bring that very kind of human element into a very digital kind of 1-0 space. But overall, I thought the work was really strong. It kind of reminded me of Jeff Darrow, I think his name is, and you've got a guy called Rotten Oak, and they're these really intensely detailed, like fine line drawings. And I just thought, just seeing like the weight of, you can see exactly how this guy stands. It's really well proportioned and really well observed. And there's a nice balance of really heavy weights and really kind of like very light line weights to show the kind of weight of the shoulders and also the kind of like shadow elements. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this stuff. I thought the storyboard elements was a nice exploration of narrative. Obviously, it's more a working document than a final piece, but I think there's ways in which you can kind of almost exist in those modern webcomic kind of spaces and bring this really nice line style into a 4-panel small story kind of thing. But yeah, all I would say is maybe explore physical colouring versus digital colouring. I think it's a tricky beast to kind of handle. But yeah, you can see the line weights there, and you can see the kind of strength in understanding colour and form. But yeah, overall, I thought Amelia's work was really strong. And then next we have Julia Muller's A1 aluminium kind of impact report. I saw it. Really kind of good understanding of layout and really interesting approaches to column design. I believe it's on page 19. So pages 18 and 19 with your full bleed image on the left and then your column structure on the right. The way in which you've done these kind of two offset columns is really nice. It allows for a detailed image to sit in there really well and not be overpowering. The only thing I would say is that your kind of stanza descriptor texts kind of conflict with the main body copy, because in which it's almost like a 9 and 10 point difference where there is a difference, but it's quite hard to discern if you're kind of a casual viewer. I think you could almost go even further with that and maybe do a third column offset and then make these super light, a bit like you're doing your kind of title pieces throughout. I believe it was page 60. And as I was looking through this, I found your use of Blender and the 3D experimentation really interesting and a really good skill to take forward. I think there's a way in which you can kind of take ready-made images and put them next to text and call it layout. But then there's also a way in which you can create everything from scratch and you end up doing these really interesting process pieces in a very experimental kind of surface and very experimental space to exist in. Page 60, which is a can top. This one. This was really strong, very stark layout. It reminded me of those Adbuster campaigns that they would do where it's kind of a banana and mayonnaise next to each other. Your way in which you've used this main tin can lid as almost like a graphic shape. It's almost disregarding what the object itself is, but using it as a main element to draw the eye in. And then you've got a nice kind of text form. I would say you could push it a bit further and maybe play with how text interacts with this shape. You've obviously got another curvature here. You could have a right aligned body copy there that then sits over. Maybe this bit potentially could sit over here, but it shows a really good understanding of how elements flow within each other. And you see it throughout the whole kind of PDF that you kind of know this structure of line, like you understand that there's a flow to it all. It's very swirly, but it's also very solid at the same time. Really strong, really nice layouts in there. Potentially go a bit further, look at kind of like Huck magazine. Look at a lot of kind of surfing magazines. They tend to take this kind of very loose editorial approach, and they kind of play around with what it means to have one image next to another and when text kind of really needs to be in there. But I thought this was really cool. I thought this was really interesting. It could potentially be a series of starting with aluminium, going into wood, going into plastics, and seeing the kind of climate costs in regards to kind of how we interact with the planet. The only thing which I thought there was kind of glimmers of was the use of color. I know obviously aluminium is a very kind of grayscale material, but there's ways in which I believe, like you've done here, you can bring in elements of color without it being so monochromatic and potentially kind of oppressive, but that you've got it in here where you're using these kind of blocks of color to really draw the eye in and also really play with how you experience left to right. But yeah, I thought this was really cool. It's funny, it reminded me of a guy called Joseph Muller, who's also a kind of layout artist, and they've both got similar surnames, which I thought was kind of interesting. Also, a really different approach from Amelia Potter's work, which is a nice kind of broad spectrum. And then finally, apologies if I kind of butcher your name, but Patricia Wozniak. this stuff really stood out to me the same kind of way in which Amelia's did, where it's very strong understanding of weight and proportions in a digital space, which actually can be quite hard to convey kind of gestural marks. And I thought the way in which you kind of understood tone was really nice. Like there's a very kind of subtle uses of shade and light that work really well. And it's just a really strong line style. You understand how, let me close off this one. You understand kind of, even though they're existing in abstract spaces and they're kind of characters of a fantasy origin, there's no reason why that couldn't be a barista in a coffee shop. Like the fundamental understanding is very strong there, and it then means it can transfer across a world of kind of narratives. And it's a really nice use of color. Really strong line style, really nice color use. It's kind of interesting that you've kind of gone this psychedelic, surreal approach. And then even this one, I thought this one was really strong. It reminded me a bit of Tim McDonough's work, and a bit less so of kind of Melissa North's kind of old work, kind of recent graduates of Westminster. So it's kind of interesting how it kind of flows through time. I would be interested to see different takes, so like maybe editorial approaches where it's kind of explaining more than one idea, more than one concept at once, or very kind of narrative driven design. Take a story, explore this character's origin, for example, or potentially do a conversation piece and see what happens there. But overall, I thought that was really nice. And I just thought it was a nice mix of work. I think there were some shout outs I wanted to give. I believe it was Stacey Sturridge with her Nike work. Yeah, here you go. This to me was like super contemporary, super fresh. I could see guys like Thorough London kind of giving her a job and being like, here's something to do. Really nice dynamic, use of shape, color and texture. What I would say of this stuff is potentially moving to motion design. Like this is very print orientated, but obviously the medium itself is moving into more digital spaces. Try doing like an After Effects version of this and let the kind of goop flow over, and then bring in your photography elements, and then kind of play and stress text in there as well. But yeah, overall, I thought really strong selection of work, and you guys should be proud of what you've done. Really nice overall. Let me go back to Teams.
Great stuff. Thank you so much, Aidan. That was really insightful. It's really, really nice to get a different perspective on this work. So I hope the students will take note, and thank you for your little top tips as well. You're kind of you know, how can this be improved a little bit? It's really, really appreciated.
But yeah, it's really good stuff. I thought it was really cool, and obviously like each year has kind of got its own theme, but this one seemed to have a very broad theme of illustrators and designers.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a really nice mix of stuff going on.
Brilliant. Great stuff. Thank you so much, Aidan. We'll take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Our final industry guest is Steph Alexander Jinks. Welcome. Please, if you wouldn't mind, just introduce yourself properly and give us your top picks.
Okay, so I'm Steph Alexander Jinks from the Artworks. I actually did illustration at Westminster many moons ago, so it's great to come back and see the work and have a little look at what I think the top picks are. It's been quite difficult to choose two people, but I have. But I just wanted to say that I was really impressed with all of the work, and I've met quite a lot of you a couple of times over the last year, which has been lovely. And just wanted to wish you all the best of luck with whatever you do, and yeah, give me a shout, let me know how you were getting on. And yeah, I was really impressed with everything, but I have to choose somebody. So my first one, I'm just going to share my screen, is Sarah Elliott. The reason I've chosen this portfolio in particular is because it really stood out to me, mainly because of the quality of the work, the confidence of the illustration work, and the consistency style, which isn't something I would expect to be this kind of sorted at this level, because, you know, everybody's still developing, but Sarah in particular seems to have really nailed on her style, and I think that it really comes across in the work that she's doing and the variation of illustration and the way she can apply this confident style to the different applications that she's done, which is a real kind of golden ticket really for going out and getting work. So I think, you know, she should be very proud of that, definitely, because it really stands out. And sort of drilling down into the individual elements, really love her characters. I think you can really connect with them, which is something that is very important if you're doing any work that involves people. They can just be kind of in the background, you know, doing things, but often you'll be asked to get them to convey some kind of emotion or feeling, and I think that they really do that, just the right amount, not too much, but just enough that you kind of engage with them rather than them just being sort of silhouettes with no emotion. So I think that's really nice. And I thought that they were just really lovely characters and really sort of unique style, really nicely drawn. And then going into the botanical side of Sarah's work, I really loved these giant leaves, which I'm trying to find now. Hold on a second. I just love those. I think they're really stylish. And again, there's just such confidence there. There's, you know, the thing with botanicals, it's very tempting to sort of cover the page with so much pattern, but this is just perfect. It's just really beautifully done, really beautifully drawn, and, you know, not needing to sort of go crazy with what's there. It's just very lovely to look at. And I really love the patterns that Sarah's been looking at as well. I think they're really lovely, gorgeous colours, composition. Patterns aren't as easy as I think people realise. I think they're quite difficult to get across, especially when you start tessellating them. They don't look the way that I think people think they did intend in the initial kind of application. So I particularly love the birds of prey, birds of paradise even pattern. I think that was really gorgeous. So I just think that the whole portfolio ties together really well, the colours, and I just think it's really strong. The artists that we represent on our roster that have a broad but confident style do really well, and the more kind of things you can do with your style once you've nailed it, the more work you'll get. So, you know, I hope Sarah keeps experimenting and branching out, but, you know, staying true to herself, which it seems to be what she's doing. But I just think, you know, keep on doing what you're doing, because it's, you know, absolutely lovely. So I'm really, really impressed, and I wish you all the best, Sarah. And now I'm going to go on to the next person. So the next person I chose for the top picks is the man. And I'm just trying to click on the work now. So the reason why I chose it is because I feel that she's really gone for it with kind of full-on artwork. There's no kind of hiding here. It's proper painting, proper artwork, and I'm really impressed that that's still happening. It makes me feel really encouraged that people are still, you know, working in such traditional ways. Even if it is done on Procreate or computer generated, it's still true to kind of, you know, very sort of foundation skills of amazing drawing and painting. And I just really particularly love this image. I think all the images really want to sort of tell a story, and as a viewer looking at the work, you really do feel like you want to know more about these people and the stories behind them. And I think they have such beautiful feeling and light, and I just love these images. So I'm just going to click through the other ones to show you. But yeah, I think that this is kind of the beginning of something really special, and I think it could be applied to so many different things. I mean, it is actually a style we get often asked for in our agency and quite a lot of other agencies actually, and it's not very sort of common to have people doing this anymore. So I think it could potentially be very lucrative. But I think the tip I would give you is just to kind of try and do lots of different things in this style. But I think your kind of special gift is the emotion and the power of these images, the composition, the people's faces, you know, what they're feeling and how well you're able to get that across, I think is extremely well done. And I really wish you all the best. I think you're absolutely brilliant. So those are my top picks. And thank you for giving me the chance to be involved in this. And as I said, I think you've all done brilliantly well. And I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Steph. That's really, really insightful, and I hope the students take on board some of your enthusiasm for their work as well. Thanks, great stuff. Thank you.
Thanks, Emma.
Okay, bye.
Bye.